All right, we are back with the GSMC Wrestling Laureate Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your favorite wrestling fan, Eric Rodriguez, here every Monday through Friday, 8 p.m. Pacific Time, 11 p.m. Eastern Time on the GSMC Sports Network. We talk about the thing we love the most, professional wrestling. We talk about all the action inside and outside the ring, backstage curtain drama and rumors. We talk about superstar and active statuses, injury updates. We talk about contract negotiations, extensions, and promotion signings. We talk about brands like WWE to AEW to TNA to the GCW to the Ring of Honor. Also, if it makes major news wrestling headlines in the world of professional wrestling, we talk about it here on this show. So make sure you guys, tune in, like and subscribe to the show. And once again, always seems like I'm running out of time. It seems like every single time I talk, man, I just can't shut up. Yeah, let's go to talk about some Sting. Sting, the icon, obviously, you guys know him from, WCW and TNA. As he inks a new contract with AEW. Not really much of a surprise. Not really much of a surprise. He, you know, much like I kind of compared Shane McMahon coming to AEW. He has a lot of insight on what happened backstage with WCW. Has a lot of insight of what happened with TNA and Panda Energy once when Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff took over in TNA with Dixie Carter and stuff like that, kind of moving her to the wayside. Sting, he has a lot of ideas. He has a lot of, do's. He has a lot of don'ts. It's been told in an interview, it's been confirmed that he does not like the way AEW creative is going right now. I'm kind of 50-50 with that. Some of the storylines I kind of like, but to be honest, I don't know, maybe he's right. Maybe he's right. I would say probably like 65% of them I'm like, what? Like, really? Recently, you saw the Don Callis family kind of get a little stronger. Then you saw the EVPs. You saw the EVPs, Matthew Nicholas Jackson, the AEW World Tag Team title holders. They've been in this storyline with Okada and Jack Perry. And this whole stable doesn't really seem like it's a stable. It seems like they go out there and just kind of be D-bags. And they just, they want people to get upset. And we get it. We get the fact that WWE, AEW, TNA, Ring of Honor, whatever wrestling promotion, the thing that flourishes fans the most is unpredictability. Sometimes it can be a little bit too much. Sometimes if you have a random, a faction like someone like a New Japan Professional Wrestling star, like Okada being signed, winning the AEW Continental Championship from Eddie Kingston, kind of aligning himself with this whole, with the EVPs, and then kind of be like a Vince McMahon on AEW, kind of controlling the behind the scenes, screwing people over. You don't see them behind the scenes anymore. You used to see that every episode where they would be in the production truck, or they'd be like, "Oh, this is our AEW World Heavyweight Champ." Like, you know what I mean? They would. Now you don't see that. So I feel like this storyline is ultimately trash. It's kind of going under. I'm kind of happy. I feel like it's better for the Young Bucks. I feel like the Young Bucks, even according to sources of AEW, said that they didn't really like this storyline to begin with. So it just fits. I feel like it's great. But Sting obviously feels like he can fix whatever's wrong with All Elite Wrestling. You have all the talent in the world, and I mean all the talent to make this brand something amazing. Obviously, you saw Bryan Danielson, quit his full-time AEW career. Well, not quit, but obviously he lost the match, and he said if he loses the title, he's gonna quit, wrestling and stuff like that full time. So, there's possibly, a lot of young stars. You had Adam Cole come back, MJF, Daniel Garcia just signed a new contract. And you have this, you had Roderick Strong. You also have Hook without an FTW championship. He's the future star of AEW. You have maybe Samoa Joe possibly coming back. You have the Chris Jericho in the Learning Tree. You have a lot of dudes, man. You have a lot, and you could borrow superstars from Ring of Honor and New Japan Professional Wrestling and the CMLL. You can, get all these guys on your brand. So right now, Tony Khan is in a good spot. Having somebody like Sting kind of hop onto the bandwagon and kind of join his, creative team could possibly be, super, super duper awesome. But according to Sting, he basically said that he's basically, it's a licensing agreement. So basically, he's kind of like a WWE Legends deal, where he can kind of help behind the scenes but make appearances at AEW as well. Last time we saw Stinger was, him helping out his former tag team champion, the one he beat, who they were undefeated. The ones, who beat Matthew Nicholas Jackson to win those tag team titles. And then you had that tournament start. that was when that's kind of crazy. I feel like that's when I got deeply invested in AEW was once when that happened. And then, then you had Sting retire. Darby Allin was left on his own with those tag team titles and just, he had no choice but to relinquish them. But, Sting, after working with brands like the NWA, with WCW, TNA, WWE, and eventually AEW, his career began back in 1985. It's crazy. He wrestled with the Continental Wrestling Alliance. Then he wrestled in the United Wrestling Federation, and then he also then he went to NWA, WCW, Sting back in 1987 to 2002. Obviously back in NWA, fighting guys like Larry Zbyszko, Mike Rotunda, and also the Great Muta. And then in WCW, fighting guys like Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan, Lex Luger, Diamond Dallas Page, Vader, and Randy Savage. And then he, after that, kind of went under. After you saw WCW go over, once when Vince McMahon bought it, Stinger kind of looked at everything. He's like, you know what, I know it. I know what's waiting for me in WWE, which Vince McMahon in an interview said that he would have never done that to Sting, but we all know that's kind of BS. When WCW talent came to WWE, they were absolutely buried. No one really got any chances. The only person that kind of stuck through it all, put his head down. He's like, you know what? I'm going to be a worker. This is the only opportunity I have to wrestle right now. Was Booker T. And I feel like that's the reason why Booker T is one of the best wrestlers in the professional wrestling industry. He's a two-time Hall of Famer with himself, with the Harlem Heat, with Stevie Ray. He deserves all the flowers right now. Booker T was definitely one of the best cases coming out of WCW. He came in as the WCW champion, winning on that final Nitro, beating Scott Steiner, and it was it was kind of surreal. The whole moment, it was very surreal. But you can understand why Sting didn't want anything to do with what Vince McMahon had planned for these WCW superstars. And you couldn't blame him. You couldn't blame him. He's like, you know what? I'm good. I'm going to go to some second-rate wrestling where I'm probably going to be offered and probably get three times less the money that I could have had in WWE if he would have signed, even if he was buried. And, which is a damn shame, because a lot of people were, I was gung ho. I wanted to see The Undertaker take on Sting. That would have been badass. I wanted to see people like Bill Goldberg take on Stone Cold Steve Austin, or I wanted to see, but then WWE had, WWF had such a bad rap. They had such a bad rap, and the way it was, like I said, it could have been done better. And if it was done better, I feel like WWE would have had a lot of more talent heading into the new generation of the Ruthless Aggression era. Obviously, you did see superstars like Batista, John Cena. You saw JBL come out of being like a devil's advocate with the Undertaker, the Ministry, and then you saw him become like this, this billionaire who invested in stock markets, and he was actually a pretty good heel. You had a lot of these young superstars, like Randy Orton. And, obviously back in you had Edge too, who needed a heel turn to, eventually find out what booking is best for him. Then, you had the vets like, Triple H kind of heading toward the end of his career. You also had, Shawn Michaels. Then you had The Undertaker, who was famously known on SmackDown. And, you had a lot of these superstars that could have possibly had maybe a little bit of help. Like, imagine if they would have done Sting, good in WWE/WWF. Maybe he could have found success there. Maybe he could have found success there. Like, we don't know. And that's the question, obviously, that, that's the $1,000,000 question, is what would have happened? Like, so it's just, I don't know, it's just crazy. But, like I said before, AEW signed Sting to a licensing agreement / Legends deal. If obviously WWE does Legends deal. It's been reported that he's upset with AEW creative talents, not talents, but, the direction, the writers. As of right now, starting from the get-go with his own career. Like, as soon as he came to AEW, he explicitly told Tony Khan that he did not want to wind up in the tag team division. Lo and behold, he only found success in the tag team division with Darby Allin winning the AEW World Tag Team Championships. So, if AEW can get any help that could, help Collision, Rampage, or this new era of HBO, it's got to be Sting. Like I said before, and I'm going to reiterate once again, if if you have a guy who's kind of seen it all, the do's and don'ts of professional wrestling backstage, I think it's got to be Sting. And I feel like that's, the right spot for him to be in right now. Being signed to a Legends deal ultimately is beneficial for him. Obviously, you get the money, dude. Also, it's beneficial for AEW, it's beneficial for Tony Khan, but most importantly, it's beneficial to the AEW fans, to the wrestling universe who tune into Dynamite, Collision, and Rampage because, sometimes a little, the same thing kind of going over and over again could get a little stale. So, definitely happy to see the Stinger wind back up into professional wrestling. That's where he belongs. So, 1010%, my man Sting, he's awesome. He's awesome. Can't wait to see what he does in AEW. All right, guys, that's it for me. Hopefully, you guys had a great time watching the podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to the GSMC Wrestling Laureate Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Remember to follow us on Twitter/X, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook for more content and updates. And like I always say, if I have not made you a wrestling fan by now, stay tuned. In about 2 minutes, we got my man Emran with the GSMC Soccer Podcast. Whether if you're a new developing soccer fan or if you just want to get into it, tune in to Emran's Soccer Podcast. He's a very knowledgeable, very entertaining. So make sure you guys tune into that. We have football right around the corner. We have, Sundays, obviously NFL. We got the GSMC Football Podcast with Kenneth, and we got the Chip Shot Football Podcast with Manny, who talk about all the breaking news in terms of the world of the NFL, the National Football League. So if you want to find out all your hot news, all the breaking news, all the do's, all the know-hows in terms of the NFL, tune into their podcast. Also, we got Saturday filled with college football. We got my man Tommy with the GSMC College Football Podcast. Tune into that as well. And surrounding football, obviously, all of us probably have a fantasy league or two to kind of dive into. You want to find out all your great fantasy knowledge, all your know-how. Tune into Chris Shepard's GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast. Find out your stardoms, your sit-ems, who to pick up off the waiver wire, who to let go with. Chris Shepard will help you be the WWE champion of your league. So make sure you tune into that. Basketball right around the corner. Starting in a couple of days, we got Nelson with the GSMC Basketball Podcast. We got All Around Sports with my boy TJ with the GSMC Sports Podcast. And of course with Jeremy with Sports by GSMC. Tune out to all those guys' podcasts. Guarantee you give the Eric Rodriguez guarantee that you never, ever, 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 ever regret subscribing to such an amazing network that gives you so many great shows with positive and also passionate podcasters. Hope you guys had an amazing weekend. Glad to see you on this beautiful Monday night. Stay beautiful, but most importantly, love you.